Hello, hello. Hello. It's me, Mayor Watt. I am the mayor of ohmTown. That is ohmTown, ohmTown.com. It's the news aggregator. It throws a bunch of stuff into a bunch of other places. It's pretty cool for me. Maybe you like it too. Just go over to ohmTown.com, sign up, become a citizen. It's pretty easy. I might reattach Twitch to it, but I took it offline for a bit while I troubleshot. It's weird to say troubleshot, but troubleshooted. Anyway, I was fixing a bug like that one right there. That shouldn't say all of that, but it does. Anyway, my news aggregator works 24 hours a day, throws it into a bunch of categories. I filter it each 24 hours. I look for some interesting articles. Some of it isn't for everybody, but I don't know. We are a composite of a whole bunch of stuff, so that's what ohmTown kind of is. Doesn't have a bunch of stuff, but it has a lot. There's categories. A ton is way up here. A bunch has a lot. I don't know. About 50 channels. Bunch of news gets thrown in there. Then I talk about it from the crossroads of business, technology, and society. It's what I do all day. Let's get into the news. Very first article. Oh, and if you still hear the ambient music, there is ambient music, spooky music playing underneath all of this. Domo arigato, hoppy Japanese style rice lager. It's Wednesday. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. We're heading towards the weekend. Maybe you're a drinker, maybe you're not, but it's still something to talk about. For some people, it's all the rage. This is from homebrewersassociation.org, and it's the Domo arigato, hoppy Japanese style rice lager. And it's a recipe that you can brew your own at home. You just follow a bunch of instructions, get the supplies, hope that it doesn't blow its top in your basement, and in a few short weeks you could have... Actually, it says after 3 days with no yeast activity, cold crash, chill the beer as close to zero as possible. Chill for a week or two if you want to push it. And then bottle or keg. So a week. You could actually drink beer earlier, but not necessarily this lager. I don't know. Really depends, but after a week of chilling, not bad, not bad. Looks like a pretty beer too. Not bad. Anyway, if you follow the link, you can go over to ohmTown and follow that link. Because the way it works is, it gets thrown into a category. This one is of the brew, the order of the brew specifically. It's basically about beer. There are others that are in it. Right, so we have all of these categories, all of these channels. So of the bean, about coffee; of the brew, about beer; of the grape, about wine; of the leaf, it's about tea. And I have one up here. I actually have a different in order of the channel name, but I really like Distillerist. So, created a channel for spirits. Not the spooky spirits like the music that you're hearing. If it's too loud, let me know. But at any rate, if you follow that link, it'll take you to this page. Then you click on the visit the source, sends you over to that page. And the same one for this. This is Sweetwater Brewing announces their fall lineup. Not much more. Really? Is it going to make me do it? No. Okay. So Sweetwater says hazy IPA. Let's see what else is in their lineup. Now they got a bunch of stuff, really. Man, this white on black background is really rough on the eyes when you're actually lit up. So let's see here. It's Strata, Eldorado, Sultana hops lead with mango, passion fruit. This is something that's been popping up quite a lot in beer lately, which is that whole fruity element to the beer. Maybe in a summer period, sure, but when we start getting into winter, some of us like a little bit heavier. I'm all over the place depending on my mood, but a Guinness during winter, yeah, I'll go there. Let's move on to the next article. We're going to move kind of fast. Maybe we can have some conversation. If you're here in chat, welcome. Shares of Cyberpunk publisher, CD Projekt Red, or CD Projekt specifically, publishers surge after announcing a slew of new games. Well, that's because industry pretty much buys on the rumor, sells on the facts or the news. And you'll see that maybe somebody can make some serious money, but right before the announcement, for whatever reason, maybe it's just me, but not everybody has full information, and the fastest people in the stock market seem to have some way of getting information before other people. Mitigate their losses or maximize their profits. Coming from doing day trading. Well, not everybody has the same level of information, and that those rumors become facts, and the distance between rumor and fact narrows as that fact becomes public. Kind of like what happened with Twitter stock. I found out about it 30 minutes after it was reported. I'm not paying attention to stock market too much nowadays, as at least active day trading. But 5 minutes before the publishing was activity. So where did that activity come from? I've always wanted to dig deeper, peel back the layers of the onion of privileged information translating into action in the stock market, because not everybody has that ability to obtain the information. But it's supposed to level the playing field. Everybody's equal. Some people are more equal. Follow that link. It'll take us over to CNBC. And my aggregator grabbed some weird news today, and I'm not quite sure if things were updated or what. But maybe if we'll stumble across it, I'll look into it later. But anyway, this is by Ryan Brown over at CNBC.com. In a strategy update Tuesday, CD Projekt revealed a slew of new titles currently in development, including a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077 called Orion. Well, it's codenamed Orion. Not sure what it's going to come out as, but Cyberpunk 2077's launch in 2020 was met with backlash from gamers who experienced bugs, poor performance on older consoles, not to mention a limited array of the feature set that CD Projekt said was going to come out. They've made a bunch of improvements. They released an anime series on Netflix. Well, and that's pretty awesome. Now there's mods for Cyberpunk 2077 where you can fly around in a hover car. Not bad. Basically be Blade Runner. Shares of the Polish game publisher CD Projekt rose sharply Wednesday after the company announced several major games. Actually, 3 of them, I believe, are... 3 of them, yeah, right? Let me scroll down here and make sure that all of this is disclosed. Right? Yeah, there we go. So 3 of them are actually around The Witcher. One is a unique one altogether, and apparently one is for Cyberpunk 2077. If you're into these kind of games, I watch people playing Cyberpunk all the time. When it was first out, The Witcher is a lot of fun to watch as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm a gamer, but a lot of this I treat like my NFL. So I watch people playing these games because it's a lot of fun. Interact with the streamer, interact with the crowd, and I just think it's more personable. I can actually interact with people from all around the world. It's quite a lot of fun to me. Well, the stock price is going to go up as we approach a release or bad news of something being hobbled or not released, or it's going to be 30 years before it gets released. You'll see a sell-off. But hopefully CD Projekt can benefit from this hype and maybe get some more investment, hire some more people, make things appear faster. That would be really great, right? Packed pipeline of games. 3 new games in the Witcher role-playing style are expected to launch in the coming years, including a new installment of the franchise codenamed Polaris, previously announced by the company in March. The game is a follow-up to the firm's highly acclaimed Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It is currently in pre-production. Some of these things they're going to be vaporware because it just doesn't make manifest, or the popularity of the franchise dies off. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I do hope that they push things into multiplayer. So it says CD Projekt's multiplayer ambitions have a lot of potential due to their higher engagement in multiplayer. So the more multiplayer games there are, at least for me, it's better world building, it's better interactivity. It makes it more real to have a dynamic instead of just characters that are programmed to walk around. Some people are getting tired of it. Conversations that I've had with people that are gamers that say, I'm tired of all of this multiplayer stuff. Just give me a game that has a great story. I agree. It should have a great story nonetheless, but still be multiplayer. There's so much conversation there, but we'll keep on trucking through the news. The next article is one that is about society, and it is titled, Why This Conservative Federal Appeals Judge Will No Longer Hire Clerks from Yale Law School. Well, I know I don't hire from Yale Law School anymore. Not since the accident. Sorry, I've never hired anybody from Yale. Anyway, so this is over at abajournal.com by Deborah Cassens-Weiss. The article is going to end up talking about, because I've read a little bit about this, not from here, but from other places, and had a discussion about this. But basically it comes down to, this person says that Yale cancels conservative voice, and thus he is canceling Yale. He says he's not canceling Yale. He wants Yale to stop canceling, something like that. I don't know. What he wants is to have the intolerant tolerate the intolerant, or I'm not quite sure what there's some, my brain can't do the mental gymnastics to get to the point where this makes sense. He's canceling those who cancel. All right. Ultimately, what ABA Journal writer Deborah Cassens-Weiss says is he's basically hanging his flag out so that when Trump gets reelected in 2024, if he gets reelected in 2024, maybe that shingle will be out there swinging in the wind, and Trump will notice James Ho. I don't know. I think that I think that there is a real problem here in that there is an appeals judge that has declared himself conservative to the point where he won't entertain the thought of hiring a liberal or a student of law who says that it is wrong for somebody to have an ideological bent like this, and this being rather intolerant, wanting to put up walls, wanting to stop them from partaking in what we do. It's also basic sociological forces. There are in groups, there are out groups. I say this every time, well, nearly every time that I talk about these things. The problem here, though, is that this person's perspective is demonstrably biased now. They aren't hiring somebody that could be fully qualified, except that their political bent, i.e. the Yale law student, is not tolerant of things that may be aligned with hate speech or they're not given a chance, because this person believes that the totality of Yale doesn't tolerate conservatism. That's not necessarily true, but I can tell you that the plurality of society has a real problem with the fringe element of conservative views, because it is vociferously intolerant of anything other than what looks and talks like me, not me, but in the them versus us thing, the fringe of the political spectrum is intolerant of those others. Except in this case, these wingnuts are rather, aggressive and getting a hold of things and being stuffed into courts like this person, who, for all intents, could be making legal determinations that are on the fringe of acceptable legal framing, because he's so overtly conservative. So maybe the bar needs to investigate a little bit more. I'm sure that I wouldn't be a friend in that court, that's for sure, because anybody that comes out swinging a bat so violently towards an entire school population of, I guarantee you, highly skilled individuals, obviously there's a taint there. So I question everything that this person would say. And I'm not saying, suppress your perspectives, but you can't make decisions about an entire population based on a vocal few saying, we don't want you here. That's what happened at Yale. They basically shouted down a conservative speaker. And now this person is saying that the totality of Yale law students won't get hired by this person. And that would be, and I've had I'm trying to remember who it was now. Basically, there is another talking head out there that is in the conservative spectrum that said, and I wish I was kidding, the reason why he's mad at the Jews is because his Jewish preschool teacher forced him to share his crayons. My mind reeled from it. I could not jump through any means. I mean, parkour of my brain was not possible. I could not get there. That as an adult, you would still carry this baggage. What you need is counseling. That's what that person needs, counseling. And this leads to another, it's tertiary to our discussion, but it is related, but it's tertiary to it. It is a fact that the liberal spectrum knows when they have mental disorders, mental issues, mental care is needed, and they seek it. And so the interpretation of a research paper by the conservative side was, well, liberals have more mental issues, and it's a mental disorder to be liberal. Thus, it's a mental issue, a mental disorder to be liberal. Well, the flip side of that is, and again, that's a blanket statement from people. Well, to me, if you're going to say something like that, then you can do the blanket reverse of that and say, well, anybody that has this wingnut conservative perspective is a sociopath, and that is a confirmed mental disorder. And the reason why the wingnut conservative component of conservatives, of the conservative wing, right? So there's a fringe. Conservatives are great. There is there's some reason why somebody wants to be conservative, but it's a spectrum. And when you get far enough to one side of it, you got the wingnut fringe, and they're deeply, in my interpretation, sociopathic. And they don't care about anybody else because they'll step on your neck to get theirs. Not all of them, but as the spectrum goes further, that's what you end up with. And the same thing happens with the wingnut side of the liberal element, where anything goes. It doesn't matter. You be whatever, anything, and I can do whatever, whenever. And there's even a court case right now where there's this, what do they call it? Not an emancipated citizen. It's oh goodness, I can't remember the name of. Anyway, this guy is running around saying that he's not bound by U.S. law, and in an argument with a judge, even though he drove his car into a parade. And he's saying that he's allowed to do that because he's not bound by U.S. law. But I can't remember the name of the whole thing now, that whole mindset. But ultimately, my point is you can't put everybody in the same basket. You can't. Let me back up. You can't frame everybody as being so liberal that you can't hire them. You won't hire them because it shows what your true colors are. And so maybe the wingnut side really it's a mental disorder, but it's a survival trait. It's a survival tactic. If you care about somebody else, then you can't accrue as much wealth and political might and be able to control them, because you'll start caring. And if you start caring, then you're basically screwed, right? Because emotion leads to poor decision making. Anyway, let's move on. There's more to that. I'm sure it'll come up again in our presentation of the news over the next months. Okay, so this next article here is about TSMC. Their shares jumped 5% after Morgan Stanley says the chipmaker is a top pick. They say here, we anticipate a semiconductor-style recovery in 2H23, so the second half of 2023, and remain bargain hunting in quality stocks right now. TSMC is our top pick. TSMC makes chips for pretty much everybody to some degree. The new NVIDIA chips are TSMC, 4 nanometer. They're basically cutting edge. These are the people that everybody goes to. These are the manufacturers for Apple chips. They basically are firmly entrenched in the manufacturing of anything IT. Abigail, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I think it's Ing. Says, and this is over at CNBC.com, Morgan Stanley described TSMC as the enabler of future technology. I would say that that's pretty true. They keep on micronizing technology. I once, close to 20 years ago, consulted with somebody who wanted to know about the IT industry. And I said, you basically need to stick to, and I referenced other companies and actually quite a few companies, and the most notorious of these publicly was Apple. Apple keeps on micronizing technology. It gets smaller and smaller, more capable, and it's companies like TSMC that make it possible to continue this process, because what they focus on, what they are subject matter experts at, what they have the near exclusive hold of, is reducing the size of manufacturing of IT components, semiconductors. So the stock rose 5% in Wednesday's trading. let's see if they say anything really interesting here. Chip stocks such as TSMC, Global Wafers Company, and MediaTek are at trough valuations. They're going to go back up at some point after a rapid market correction, analysts at Morgan Stanley said. Meanwhile, the secular trends in 5G, artificial intelligence of things, and electric vehicles, which need semiconductors, are not reversing. Yeah, we'll get into this about the economy here before the show is over. But before that, let's do a really quick flip to the other side of existence, and that's entertainment. If you, because it's Halloween, I grabbed this title. It's about Hellraiser. If you've never seen the Hellraiser franchise, there are a bunch of them. I would probably say limit yourself to the first three. But Hellraiser, for the most part, of its 2-hour running time, actually does feel like a Disney movie, except for those moments when it seems to have been taken over by the spirit of Marquis de Sade. So this article is titled, it's in the Continuity Report, it's titled Hellraiser Review, a reboot of the Pain Freak horror franchise is now the world's edgiest Disney movie. I didn't watch this release of Hellraiser over on Hulu because I was so worried. Well, first off, I absolutely hate the Hulu interface. But I was worried that they were going to botch this, and I wanted to hear some reviews before I dig into this. Now, this review is probably going to actually kind of push me over to watch it. I might renew my subscription with Hulu just so that I can watch it. But I really dig the Hellraiser world building. It's really interesting. You think that it is one thing, but it's not. It's not really hell so much as actually another dimension. Owen Gleiberman is the author of this article over at Variety.com. But it says it's got fleshed herring extravagance and a newly androgynous pinhead, but it needed a better story. And maybe that'll come if it's received well, but articles, reviews like this actually kind of stifle the potential of something bigger coming, because it's not on an even keel. You know, calling Hellraiser and calling this the Disneyfication of Hellraiser doesn't really sound right, because there's a lot of things that are dark on the Disney side of things. And Disney is much broader than, well, Cinderella. And if you were to, Disneyfication of Cinderella is legit, but maybe just Hellraiser was, let's open the door a little bit to get more people interested, and a better story will come in part 2 of this, if there is one. But again, reviews like this that call it Disney kind of put the brakes on things like that. It says, yet even before it reaches the under the skin, I'm in climax, the new Hellraiser could be considered one of the more perverse fright films in recent memory. It's a walk on the wild side horror movie that's being released by Disney, and if you're wondering how Disney, apart from the fact that they own everything in sight, including Hulu, the platform that's streaming Hellraiser, would now be associating its brand with a horror series devoted to the nightmare exhortation of ultrasexuality, the answer is Hellraiser. For most of its 2-hour running time, actually does feel kind of like a Disney movie. So it's going to be kind of a soft-sided Hellraiser release. It didn't get released on Disney Plus because this is not directly on brand. That's why they own Hulu. That's why HBO, well, that's why there is a compartment for segments, genres, right? So you know that you can get adult content from Cinemax. You know that you're going to get all kinds of sports from ESPN and ESPN 2 and 3, and I think there's a musical version of it. At any rate, there's a whole lot more in this review. But suffice it to say, if there is too much Disney in this, which it's impossible to have too much Disney in this, it's gonna stop. There's only so much Disney that can pull this thing out of the Hellraiser franchise. And when you're looking at a picture of the new Pinhead and the person's skin is kind of peeled back in a decorative sense, you can kind of bet that this isn't going to be entirely Disney. I don't think that you're going to have your kids hanging out in the room with you while you're watching this. Let me drop 2 articles in chat so that at least I'm caught up, and I kind of get into a groove. And what I'm going to end up doing really is I'm going to post all of these links, because I already have the links, but I'm going to post them all in a publicly accessible location, and viewers will be able to click on what their favorite articles are and vote. And so I have Showbot installed, and you can actually vote for like things that are talked about. You just hit exclamation Showbot and it gives you what the syntax is, and so you can sit there and do this and this, and then go to ohmTown.showbot.tv and review what people have submitted as possible areas of topic within our topics, so that in later shows I can be on the lookout for this type of material. When I do shows about crypto and stuff like that, then some people are more interested in it, and I'm happy to find more articles. On given days, we will actually have a more heavy set focus in coming months and coming days. So let's keep on hustling through all of the news. This next article is U.S. starts fiscal year with a record $31 trillion in debt. That brings me to kind of the stock period, the market and business sector of the show. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average went down only 42. It had made some pretty beefy moves up Friday and Monday and Tuesday. And then today it went down another just 42. So not much of a flinch, but I think some flinching is going to arrive here pretty soon. S&P 500 went down 7.6. NASDAQ went down 27. Bitcoin is always trading, and it's down right now 204. But gas made a big jump, 3 cents. So it's right now across the U.S. on average it's $3.83. And you know, there's other indicators like crude oil that seemingly have no real-time impact on the stock market as a whole. So there might be sectors, but well, it's interesting to see the stock market collapse, yet oil, which is a leading indicator on how much gas is going to cost, and by proxy of that, how much the consumer price index is going to go up or down, because gas is included in it, and the producer price index, which is the leading indicator for the consumer price index. This is a daisy chain of greed. I might as well call it what I think it is. And when one goes up, they all go up, primarily the producer price index and gas prices. So that's where we are right now with the stock market. And the U.S. is starting the fiscal year with $31 trillion in debt. Now, something that's really interesting about the U.S. economy is that for every dollar that the government spends, $8 is returned. This is an old Pogo audit review of the financial machinations of the government. So $31 trillion isn't really... I mean, it's a lot of debt. to be burdened by, but what would be worse would be missing a payment or shutting down the government because of the effectiveness and efficiency of the government. But a lot of people have, they have a different perspective, but it's not really born from being in the know of what goes on with government. And that's why I started the segment of ohmTown called Far Weekly, so that people could ask questions and we can talk about government contracting in particular. So that's the business aspect of the government, and it's severely hobbled, by the way. There's lots of controls in place. That said, let me pause this because this video is not about this article. The nation's gross national debt has surpassed $31 trillion, according to the U.S. Treasury report released Tuesday. Fatima Hussein over at Associated Press for ABC News wrote this article, and it says, edging closer to the statutory ceiling of roughly $31.4 trillion, an artificial cap Congress placed on the U.S. government's ability to borrow. The debt numbers hit an already tenuous economy facing high inflation, rising interest rates, and a strong U.S. dollar. Now, that ceiling is rather arbitrary. It's something that Congress puts up, yet when you look at the historical record of it, it declines during certain administrations and goes up. The debt goes up during certain administrations, and until I grab the chart and have a ready discussion about it, I'll hold off on disclosing this process. But it's convenient for some administrations to just kind of go, yeah, now is the time to raise it because it's extremely important to bail out a bank or bail out an industry or solve some issue. But then when there's a transition, suddenly the fiduciary duty becomes so paramount that it's better to shut down the government. But it becomes very obvious when you look at the stats, when you look at the data. So I would urge you to do exactly that. Zadar said the debt should encourage us to consider some tax policies that almost passed through the legislative process but didn't get enough support, like imposing higher taxes on the wealthy and closing the carried interest loophole, which allows money managers to treat their income as capital gains. I think this is probably the biggest issue, is that there are great strides being done for the people by the government, but really where all the wealth is going is to private individuals who have hoarded it, or not just hoarded it, it's not in the system how you think it is as a consumer or as a citizen of the United States. A billionaire, I've heard this before, I've heard this countless times, a billionaire does not hold on to all of his billions or her billions. There are no female billionaires in the United States, I don't think. But so at least not self-made in any way, generational wealth, etc. Anyway, my point is that the wealth isn't just sitting there. You're right. Wow, you got me. But what's expected is that money is invested, and the investment expects 8 to 12% return on the investment at the minimum. And if the if the advisor doesn't do that return, they'll go and find another advisor to invest. The billions, there is an expected return on that capital. So in a nutshell, $1 billion expecting 8 to 12% return on the investment means that money has to make that 8 to 12%, and then whoever receives that money expects their own rate of return, and the people that receive that money expect their own rate of return. It's money getting loaned to other people who loan it to other people, and by the time it becomes a mortgage somewhere, you're looking at what we have today, which is a 7% interest rate on a 30-year mortgage when you have an 800 score on your credit rating. If you drop down to the 700s, you're looking at about 7.3% on a mortgage. An entirely untenable position compared to a year ago when it was sub 3% for 800 on your credit report, and the average 700 somewhere around 3.2. It's more than double right now. So what's truly happening here? Taking money out of the system? It's only taking it from the middle class because the upper class is investing their money with an expected 8 to 12%. More than even the interest rate on a mortgage, and they don't have a mortgage. They pay off their financial burden, and then you are paying the mortgage on the property that you are leasing that is owned by a billionaire. That's the process. That's how it works. Even if it is a bank, the bank is either getting it from the Federal Reserve directly, I don't know, or elsewhere, but it's at an interest rate that is expected to have a return. So let's move on to the next article. This next article is more on the firing of that NYU professor that I spoke about yesterday. I suspected that there was more to it. I have not read this article, but a professor doesn't normally get fired for sticking to their perspective of teaching unless it's arbitrary or capricious. That makes it basically an unethical grade or performance. So it says it's really just a routine bureaucratic affair. That's what this article is saying. So let's go over to this opinion piece by Tressie McMillan Cottom. More on the firing of that NYU professor. Dun, dun, dun. Let's scroll down a little bit. So this person, this professor, actually is pretty well known, very capable, has a huge history in their domain. They have pushed the limit of it in terms of what they have written about, what they have researched. It says Jones caught organic chemistry as a contingent or adjunct faculty member at a private university. The majority of higher education professors are now contingent, meaning that they don't have to get protections of tenure. It's true. The at-will state has pushed its way into academia. This is true even at highly selective institutions like NYU. Generally speaking, contingent faculty members are low paid and low status. Yes, they actually get referred to as something other than professor. They get titled guest speaker or faculty, but not professor. They might be called instructor, but not professor. Kind of interesting. But this person had already retired and was returning. So this is the Maitland Jones Jr., New York University professor that was let go because he stuck to his compass in teaching. So when teaching contracts are fungible, administrators rely more heavily on student evaluations than they do peer evaluations. Even if the administrators do not weigh student evaluations in judging the performance of the professors. That is largely true, but it's primarily because the perspective of administrators is that, well, students don't necessarily have the ability to judge the professor for their professional instruction so much as how they are treating the students and how timely their responses are and things like that, and less about the the brunt of the instruction. If it is academically sound, there's more leeway for the instructor. Until there is a broad swath of people that say this professor is abusive in some way. And even then, depending on the gravitas of the instructor, they may even look past that. So even if administrators do not weigh student evaluations in judging professors' performance, it's easy to see how contingent faculty members can construe them as a kind of up or down vote. Student satisfaction is an easy metric for a university to use to measure success, but only because, by definition, it means the professors are not causing bureaucratic headaches for higher-ups. And that too is pretty much supported by history. If there's enough of a stink brought to the school, a professor will roll. So this author says they can sympathize. Their own student evaluations have called their assigned reading brutal and dense and hard, and they try to strike a balance between challenging students and accommodating their discomfort with learning. I agree. Most professors do at some point, as long as the core learning outcomes are met. Jones's teaching struggles are common when generations collide in the classroom, but it isn't just about generational differences. It is about a course like organic chemistry, which in part designed to filter out students unsuited to rigorous pre-med curriculums. Agree. These are gatekeeper courses. It's like the Great Filter. Only certain people will be able to surpass this, either by not hitting the B grade that's required for matriculating through the program, or because the friction in the class is so great that people bow out. It can determine ultimately the career of the student. It says the estimated total cost of attendance for an on or off-campus student attending NYU over the 2022-23 school year is $83,250. So times 4 to get your butt out the door, to earn enough money to pay that student loan back, unless you come from money to begin with. So let's see if this person, hold on one second. Yeah, this transitions into something else later on, but in the final analysis, this is not a great example of academic standards adrift. Organic chemistry has always been challenging. Many majors have similar courses that have been taught at scale, which means bringing a lot of contingent labor to meet demand. Anxieties around such funnel classes, in which failing means starting over or changing majors, are as old as the kind of courses themselves. This is not an invention of the student-consumer model. The tell is that students who petitioned against Jones were surprised that he was fired. That's not what the petition asked for. This does not exactly smack of the inmates running the asylum. It's more likely a case of the administration treating Jones the way it has undoubtedly treated their contingent faculty for years. This episode is a bureaucratic resolution to a worker widget that created one too many bureaucratic problems. The labor issue is by far the bigger social problem. And that's the reason why something like a union will appear for instructors at NYU, if there isn't one already. But adjuncts are not necessarily allowed to partake. Hence, there would be the creation of adjunct instructor or contingent instructor unions forming, which I wouldn't be surprised would be summarily dismissed from hiring at all if they had to disclose that they were part of a union. You can't have a distributed union. You have to have like a plurality of union position holders within an enterprise. It's not really cut and dry, and it's by state and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's all kinds of fidelity in that. So unfortunately, I think that this person actually set the bar high, and slammed the gate shut on people who, in his professional opinion, couldn't meet the rigor of matriculating through the program. And when a plurality of people start yelling vociferously, this is what you end up with. So let's move on to the next article. With Elon Musk poised to close the Twitter deal, hand-wringing reignites over what is the right-leaning tech mogul to do. Let's throw this in the chat. Elon Musk looks ready to get his hands on Twitter. The world's richest person has agreed to his original $44 billion acquisition. I didn't look at Twitter, and I didn't look at SpaceX, and I didn't look at, I should say Tesla. But let's go on over to this article. Todd Spangler over at Variety wrote this article. Here's Elon Musk in a picture in a white tie affair with a look of, are you going to eat that donut? Elon Musk looks ready to get his hands on Twitter. There it is. Is that Twitter over there? Is that Twitter over there? I see Twitter. The world's richest person agreed to his original $44 billion acquisition. Somebody probably explained the law, which is what was said in an article, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before. In Musk's first comments after the news of his decision to proceed with the $44 billion buyout, he wrote in a cryptic tweet, of course, there is no other thing than a cryptic tweet. Buying Twitter is an accelerant to creating X, the everything app. So this is all marketing BS. X, by the way, was his, as far as I know, his first foray into a .com. He owned X.com. It got parlayed into, he bought his way into PayPal. That got sold, and he bought his way into Tesla. That spun off because there are brilliant engineers out there into a government contract for SpaceX. And if you look at anything, it's really the engineers that are making it, not Musk. You know, he came from money, has money, bought his way into middle management. I shouldn't say middle management, CEO again and again. Well, he announced his $44 billion deal for Twitter. Musk said he was primarily interested in protecting free speech on the platform, but nobody has ever really hobbled in it unless you are batshit crazy on the site. You can literally say anything you want, and it would be invisible to the plurality of people. So I guess the free speech for the politically connected, rich, and or batshit crazy people. Musk has also said that Twitter's permanent ban of Donald Trump was a morally bad decision. No, it's flat out wrong to allow somebody that has that much influence to say that much wrong, scientifically, demonstrably provable wrong stuff to people. Not to mention, it can fan the flames of, storming the Capitol. We are slowly moving towards losing democracy because the wingnuts are running the asylum. At any rate, so hand-wringing, reigniting, I don't know about hand-wringing. I think that people, and here's what I think is going to end up happening, and this is what I was telling people recently. They're going to end up privatizing it. So once this buyout happens, it's private. They're going to tweak things. Everything is going to be private. They're going to IPO, and the reality of what Twitter is will reemerge like the old Twitter. That's exactly what's going to happen, except there's going to be billions of dollars made, probably eclipsing the $44 billion deal, because investors are going to have a fear of missing out, so they're going to ramp that stock price up through the roof, because there is not enough due diligence. When an IPO takes place, a bunch of people are going to find out a bunch of numbers that are generated by the company, and then the reality of what Twitter is will come, because people will start tapping back into the fire hose and will have access to all of the same number of bots that existed before, all of the fake accounts, and all of the fluff. Nothing is going to change at Twitter, except that a lot of rich people are going to be richer. So the next article is the last one for today. Cyber bill to fund minority community college programs. This is a cyber bill that is going to extend cybersecurity workforce efforts. The Cybersecurity Clinics Grant Program Act, the CCGPA, would establish a grant program based in the Department of Homeland Security that would fund cybersecurity education at community colleges and minority-serving institutions. And do things like build a curriculum that's built around cybersecurity and allow for kind of like, what would you call it? Having publicly accessible periods where people can come and be evaluated for their cybersecurity profile, make sure that their computers are secure, make sure that the computers are working properly. It's pretty aspirational. The amount of liability is going to be tremendous, and I can foresee liability being applied to a program when somebody gets breached after there is some type of discussion. But we don't know the full expanse of this, either in DHS or in academia or in small business. Inez Kagubare, I think is the pronunciation of the last name, writes this article for The Hill. It says, building the next generation of young Americans in the cyber workforce requires strategic investments and opportunities that offer high potential path to help increase the number of experienced cybersecurity professionals. Well, the problem with cybersecurity is that it is a privileged position, meaning you have access to fundamental aspects that give you information at a level that others do not. Access to the infrastructure of an enterprise that is usually clamped shut and should be zero access. The cybersecurity clinics, which is the word that was failing me, are intended to be interactive and personalized workshops that will help students understand the importance of protecting devices and data from physical and digital threats. As long as this doesn't have actual individuals coming to these clinics and offering up their computers for evaluation, I'm fine with it. But the moment that there is some type of commercial interaction where there's an expectation of performance from these clinic attendees, I think that there's going to be a problem. So the cybersecurity industry has been facing a labor shortage, which isn't necessarily true. They say that there is a labor shortage, but when people are coming to them for internships and mentorships, they're turned away because they don't have already enough industry experience and certifications already in tow. And because an employer can pick and choose who rises to the top in their offering of a position, they kick all of the people who don't already have the certifications to the curb. And it's getting to the point where even if you are lacking top secret clearance already, you can't get a cybersecurity job that's related to the federal government. So it says here, with already scarce cyber workforce, women and minorities only make up a small percentage of cybersecurity professionals. Yes, that is true. I'll say that part. But it's not because there's a scarce cyber workforce. It's because there isn't any acceptance of women, in particular in cybersecurity. For whatever reason, not a lot of women want to be in an IT cybersecurity field. I say that. I I know that it's true. It's not just me kind of just throwing that out there. And they're not necessarily accepted, which is a problem that is institutional in nature. It's systemic in society. Go and look at gamers, and you'll see that there's a lot of toxicity about women being in a technical field, even though everybody is potentially capable of excelling in the field. It's all about passion and dedication. So it says here, according to the report published last year by the Aspen Tech Policy Hub, only 4% of cybersecurity workers self-identified as Hispanic and 9% self-identified as Black. Meanwhile, women make up just 24% of the cybersecurity workforce, which I think is actually, it's trending up. It's growing. And I think it's great that it's moving forward. Saying just 24% belies the fact that it's trending up. And again, it's about embracing the population and saying you have the ability to do it. But you can do that with anything, really, cybersecurity or business or IT in general, or biology or physics or whatever. It's all about making it possible to embrace the domain, and not allow the incumbent population to go, well, you're not like us, so you're not allowed. In fact, I would probably encourage people to discount anybody that says something like that. So it says here again, these clinics will provide students with a pathway to enter the cyber workforce with practical experience, which will only benefit our country's national security in the long run. Unfortunately, there will not be enough clinics to get somebody outfitted for a job, because the industry pretty much expects certain basic certifications like A+, Net+, Security+, and beyond. There are others. At any rate, that's it for today. Again, I am Mayor Watt. This is the ohmTown Daily News Show. That is ohmTown.com. Please stop by. If you are new here, you stumble across the VOD, or you're in my chat and I actually don't see the counter telling me how many people are in here. I never trust the website. Anyway, hit follow. That'd be great. Love to get that to 100%. It was once at 100%. It's now at 67. I moved the goal. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Thanks. Bye-bye.